CataractCoach.com. Welcome to our podcast series. Today's episode number 3. And we're talking with 3 young residents. These are senior residents at the UCLA Jewel Stein Eye Institute. And we're talking about the future of ophthalmology from their perspective. What were the challenges in their residency training program? And this applies to residency training or resident or registrar training across the planet. And what are some of the pearls? What are some of the challenges they're going to face? What's the future of ophthalmology going to look like? I think you'll really enjoy this podcast. A little different from the first 2 podcasts where we had Drs. Osher and Lindstrom, 2 huge names in our field. But it's time to hear from the other end of the spectrum, the young doctors who are just starting out on their careers. Let's learn from them. All right, welcome to our Cataract Coach podcast, episode 3 now. Our previous 2 episodes were very world-famous ophthalmologists, and today we've got 3 young ophthalmologists in training. So, senior residents here at UCLA. And I'm going to start off by asking, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Kind of what's your journey so far, where you grew up, college, med school. Why did you choose ophthalmology? Why did you come to UCLA?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one first. My name is Gio Campagna. I'm one of the senior residents at UCLA. I was actually born in Iowa because that's where my dad did some of his ophthalmology training. But after that, he owed several years to the military, so he moved to San Antonio, and I grew up in Texas. I never really made it very far from home. I went to college in my backyard, essentially at UT, and then I went to medical school at Baylor. And at Baylor is actually really where I found my interest in ophthalmology. I don't know.
That's a great program for ophthalmology and a great med school. So
yeah, we feed a lot of people into ophthalmology. It seems like 1 out of every 10 Baylor medical students seems to go into ophthalmology. But I never really gave my dad the time of day when I was in high school or middle school. I should have paid a lot more attention to his craft. I didn't. I was trying to do my own thing. But then in medical school, I was really, really fortunate to learn from some truly excellent mentors at Baylor, especially in the cataract and anterior segment space. Dr. Koch.
Oh, Doug Koch, yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Amaltasib. They're really, really, just excellent.
She's recently left.
She did, I know. I was so disappointed to hear that, but also happy for her because I think she...
You gotta find your happiness.
You gotta find what makes you happy. But I just found that they had this kind of passion for perfection, and it was infectious. It really never ended, and that really drew me to the specialty, was their enthusiasm for what they did. And so I'm really fortunate to be here in Los Angeles. I feel super grateful to be a resident at UCLA every day. I wouldn't go back and do anything differently.
Awesome. And so what are your plans after? You're finishing in a few months.
We are. I just matched to a fellowship at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm going to be doing glaucoma and anterior segment surgery with Dr. Shabani.
Oh, awesome. So great. I have a video of his on Cataract Coach, and no joke, I put in there, the text is, the first time I met Arsham Shabani, I knew I was in the presence of greatness. He is just such an amazing clinician and surgeon. And even better, he's just a really sweet guy. You're going to have a fantastic time with him.
I feel so fortunate. I'm really, really excited. He's just, he's an awesome mentor. I had a chance to speak with him even today for just a little bit at a local symposium where he was speaking about MIGS and cataract surgery. So it was really exciting. I can't wait. Very, very much looking forward to it.
Awesome. And Alex.
Cool. Yeah. So my name is Alex Nishi. I'm a California native, so I was born and raised in the Bay Area, Cupertino originally. Went to Cal for undergrad, and then Northwestern for med school, and then now I'm studying in LA for residency. So super grateful to be here as well. I think my interest in ophthalmology sort of started actually in college. I did some eye research.
Oh wow, early.
Yeah, so pretty early on, just looking at like lenses in mice. And then I think my love kind of really sort of blossomed in medical school. I was really lucky to have to find a really great mentor, Amani Fazzi, who you've actually
yes,
met, I think.
She was one of our residents because she was amazing.
Yeah, she was great, and she really helped me kind of nurture my interest in ophthalmology, and really helped me like commit to the specialty overall.
Amani was unbelievably amazing. So when I was chief at Olive when she was a resident there, she had already done a complete set of training outside the U.S. And so whenever there'd be some unusual retinal-like white dots, I would say, Amani, come here, help me, what is this? So she was teaching me, even when she was a resident. She was fantastic. Yeah. What an amazing person.
Yeah. I'm very lucky to have met her and been mentored by her. So.
Oh, that's really neat. And then what are your plans after?
So looking at going into private practice, pretty close to signing a contract up in the Bay Area.
Oh, fantastic.
So we'll see how that goes, but I'm really excited for it.
Do you have any particular interest for practice? I mean, I know training at UCLA, you can go and do everything that walks in the door, basically.
Yeah, so I think overall I'm probably more interested in the cataract refractive side. Again, I think I want to just build up a good patient base first and then hopefully be able to sort of transition more into that later on. But that's kind of where my interests lie.
I think it's the right move. That's what I ended up doing. I did everything that walked in the door for the first about 6 years, including BMR, strabismus surgery on babies and simple ptosis repair, obviously cataracts. I mean, the amount of retina training you get at UCLA. So to do PRP or to do individual injections you'll finish this program with thousands of them. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I think we're coming out feeling very well prepared. So.
Yeah, you'll do great.
Yep, I'm Michael Matheson. I'm also PGY4 at UCLA. I grew up in the Southern California area.
Whereabouts?
Orange County,
Okay.
North Tustin, San Fran area. But I left California for school. I actually went to WashU in St. Louis for both undergrad and medical school. So
Awesome.
I'm very excited that Gio's going to be going to St. Louis next year. I think you're really going to like it. But WashU was an excellent place for medical school. I went into medical school really not knowing much of anything about ophthalmology, but I was lucky enough to have really great mentors along the way. I knew I wanted to do something surgical. I was toying with the idea of maybe plastic surgery or urology or some of these other surgical subspecialties, but then I had the opportunity to rotate in ophthalmology, and it didn't take long to realize that ophthalmology kind of ticked all the boxes I was looking for.
Sure, of course.
There was really no other specialty where it really seemed like all the patients were happy, the practitioners and surgeons were happy, and it seemed genuine. And really, I don't know of any other specialty where you can make a lifetime of difference in a patient's life in less than an hour. You can affect multiple patients' lives.
It's amazing.
Cataract surgery is really just like a miracle. So after seeing a few cataract surgeries and seeing the patients before and after, I pretty much knew right away. And on the topic of mentors, I had a few great mentors, Dr. Mort Smith, and John Land, who made my approach to ophthalmology very easy, which wasn't the case for all of this other specialties I was looking at. So, and I love it. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, man. Yeah, I didn't decide till my last year of med school. And so I just started my fourth year of med school. I had some I was going to do maybe ENT or neurosurgery is okay, but and I just did a rotation in ophthalmology. Like you, I just, wow, this is everything. It's everything I wanted. Yeah. And then I finally figured out how to spell it, and I was like, okay, I can probably do that.
Yeah.
I can probably do it. So.
And I'm also planning to do comprehensive ophthalmology. My interest is probably more in cataract and refractive surgery, but I know that I have a lot to learn as a comprehensive ophthalmologist before undertaking that. And so I'm also looking at private practice jobs.
Yeah, one of the mistakes I made actually in finishing training is thinking that what you learned in residency is like, they taught you everything, and no, they taught you at best the building blocks, the basics, the foundation. You got to keep learning, and obviously our field keeps changing. Well, the way you operate today is not how you're going to operate in 5 or 10 years. There's no way. So you got to kind of keep up on that and keep up with the changes. And ultimately, too, I think another important lesson is your practice evolves with time. You don't end up doing the same thing forever. You can keep evolving it. So if you find a particular thing you think is very interesting, you have a passion for, then you start doing that. And another good bit of advice, if you're starting off, is take on the really tough cases. So you're joining a group with some more senior doctors. I would love to have some young gun come join me and say, hey, you know what? That really ultra-brunescent, dense rock, 2 millimeter pupil, high hyper, I'll do it for you. Like, really? Here, have it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the challenges in practice are different than in residency. What do you think are your biggest challenges in residency?
Gotcha. There are so many, but sometimes I think one of my biggest challenges personally is more on a bit of self-reflection. Actually, I feel like, especially where we are at UCLA, it's an incredible program that's run by a lot of really talented and intellectual people who've really contributed a lot to the field. And sometimes I just don't feel like I belong there. I feel, sometimes I feel
imposter syndrome?
Yeah, like I slipped through the cracks somehow, and now I'm learning from the best. And it's really hard sometimes to feel like you can stand shoulder to shoulder with some of these people. But So, I'm very critical of myself. I watch a lot of my own, surgical videos, and I'm just sometimes not happy with the way it goes. And I feel like I impose a lot of really high standards on myself. And it's especially hard when your co-residents too are so capable and so intelligent and so good at what they do. It's really hard sometimes, I feel like, to, convince yourself that you're the best version of yourself that you can be. But fortunately, all of my co-residents are super supportive. I think we have a terrific culture of support, especially among our peers, and a lot of the leadership that actually manage our residency program. But even still, sometimes I feel like you're your own biggest critic, and every day that I'm in the OR, I walk out of a case feeling like I could have done something better. And so sometimes I think that some of the biggest challenges are just, learning to accept that you've got a long ways to go and there's still a lot to learn. So, but it's all part of the journey.
You got to be your own toughest critic. I'm still my own toughest critic even now, so that's like a great sign. The imposter syndrome thing. Do you guys feel that at all too, a little bit?
A bit, yeah. And I think especially when you look at your co-residents, and it's funny because all your co-residents are probably thinking the same thing.
100%.
When you compare yourself to one another, you think, well, this resident has done all of this research and all these surgeries, and so yeah, I think everybody probably feels it.
Yes, I'd agree.
Get really close to the microphone there, buddy.
The other thing I'll say to that point, that actually I really personally enjoy this, especially amongst the three of us, but we frequently send each other all of our surgical videos. I mean, if you go through our phones, like our text messages, you'll find surgical videos several a week. And sometimes I'm kicking myself watching one of their videos and thinking, well, why wasn't my wound this good?
Yeah,
why wasn't my rexus this round? It's all constructive, and I feel like that's really helped me to get better and better and better.
Yeah, I think we make a point to not just send the pretty 8-minute cases or whatever, but sending the ugly ones that
That's how you learn.
What happened here?
Alex, did you see that case on CataractCoach yesterday?
I did, yeah. It was.
Give the brief synopsis because people don't know what kids talking about.
So I believe the case yesterday was an expert surgeon who just had a really, really tough case of floppy iris. Just a really, really tough case, and it looked like everyone was kind of suffering in that case. So
that's the amazing is that surgeon is incredibly talented and has tens of thousands of cases of experience. So that kind of like lightning strike happens to all of us, and sometimes, boy, it hurts. But you see cases like that remind you that we're all human too, and the imposter syndrome thing is totally natural, totally normal. In fact, if you think back, you probably had it throughout your career, right? Everyone has this. In med school, like, oh God, these kids are so much smarter than me, right? And then somehow you end up AOA, and oh wow, how'd that happen? Well, I got the residency you wanted. So no, you'll see. It's a good thing to be a little bit of have the imposter syndrome to a small degree, but also to be your own toughest critic, because that's how you learn. Yeah. And no one's going to be as hard on you as you will yourself.
Yeah, and I'm finding sometimes too that I even wish our faculty were a little harder on us, because sometimes I walk out of cases without much feedback at all from them, and in my head I'm going through all kinds of things that I think could have gone better or gone differently or I should have done differently, and so
it's a sticky climate though. Let me tell you,
I bet.
there are some med students, residents who may complain about like, well, the attending was too tough on me, and I guess there's some sort of balance. It's tough.
It's tough. I'm with you though. My favorite cases are the ones where the attendings are nitpicking me on the way I hold something, or the way my hands are positioned, or my arms, or things that maybe might not be in the view of the scope that might be overlooked. And when we had the chance to operate with you, I know that was one of the big things that you would always harp on as well. And
yeah, for sure.
Grateful to have that instruction from people. I mean, you may graduate with 200 cases, but you're the only person there for all 200 of those cases. So it's
up to you.
You might have 20 different attendings. They may only see you for a number of cases.
Yeah.
They can't help you as much with your trajectory to improve as you can for yourself. So you have to watch your cases. You have to nitpick yourself.
What about that surgical learning curve? How steep is that now? How tough is that?
It seems like there's just no end to the surgical learning curve. But I will say, I think, especially the three of us, I do feel like we made efforts early on to try and flatten that curve at the beginning as early as possible.
Like what'd you do?
I can remember several days where the three of us were in the wet lab together on Saturday mornings. That was a pretty common thing when we were second years, especially before our Alaview rotation.
For the listeners, that's the rotation with me. Prior to my retirement. entirely.
Man, I mean, we probably did hundreds, thousands of corneal sutures between the three of us before doing one corneal suture with you and all of you. So, I do think that we did the best we could to flatten that learning curve early on, and some of it is just getting your hands dirty and going in your free time to work on things. And so so
you don't need a $250,000 IC simulator.
Oh my gosh! You should see our microscopes. Our microscopes look like they've been around for 30 years in the wet lab. But they any set of any work under a microscope is helpful, and I really feel like having spent several dozens of hours underneath a wet lab microscope prior to going into the OR gave me just a little bit more confidence maybe that I would have.
What were you suturing on? Just cadaver eyes, pig eyes?
Pig eyes.
Tomatoes, grapes,
chicken skin.
Anything.
There were chicken breasts sometimes, but we have a really good supply of pig eyes. But yeah, I remember senior residents taking grapes to the olive view procedure room sometimes. Wet tissue paper I've heard of is a good one to try and sew back together. So anything just to get your hands moving.
To work under the scope. Yeah, it's a learned skill, obviously. I mean, the good news with cataract surgery is I can tell you from personal experience, tens of thousands of cases later, I still love it. I'm not bored at all. I love it, look forward to it every single week. So it's something I certainly highly recommend there. So the IC simulator is not that big of a deal. You'd rather do more wet lab time, just getting your hands under the scope.
I think so. I mean, I will say on the IC, my personal opinion is that it's helpful for certain elements of surgery, but the more time you spend on IC, the better you become at IC. You don't necessarily become better at cataract surgery.
Yeah.
So I do feel like it's really helpful for beginners with the foot pedal, though. It's hard to get that experience in any sort of simulated manner. So I like it. We've all completed our modules, but it's not something I would probably go back to now. Early on it's helpful, but now I'm not so sure I would go back to it.
I personally actually really like the IC, so I do agree that the microscope, just the wet lab microscope, is probably the best. But I like the IC for the Rexus mainly, and then also and also for just improving my left hand dexterity. So,
teaching you to pivot the incision basically, or
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't punish you though for not. So that's
Speaking of non-dominant hand dexterity, like left hand dexterity, do you also do other things like shave, brush teeth, eat with your non-dominant hand?
Ever since I started watching your videos and kind of operating with you, absolutely. And then also, what else? I've tried like just writing with my left hand.
Sure.
And then again, like working on the IC with my left hand, like trying to Rexus with my left hand, doing suturing with my left hand.
Sure.
I feel like that's all been very helpful for that in the OR.
Is residency long enough these days? And I ask that because, just think of this question. I did the same 4 years you did. I learned like half the material. Half the things didn't exist. I mean, there was no OCT machine, there was no anti-VEGF, there was a lot of things that were very different.
Yeah, that's a terrific question. I'll just briefly mention something. I think that, if you look across the world, really, Canada spends, I think, 5 years doing ophthalmology, and
the UK is way more.
Yeah, and even I think even in this country, like 20, 30 years ago, I think Iowa had a longer residency program than every other
correct.
So
it was an extra year.
It was an extra year, and it's tough. I don't really know what to make of it because you only know what you know.
Sure.
But I am very, very grateful for the 3 years of very compressed, high-speed learning that we have. It would be great to do more, but at the same time, I'm also looking forward to transitioning to that next phase of my career. So it's hard. I don't know the right answer. But
you gotta. Ultimately, I think the answer is you gotta just teach yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everything else.
I think the length of time is okay. I mean, like you always say, you're not going to graduate residency knowing everything and being an expert at everything that you need to know. So, sure, you could add more years and maybe you'd come out more experienced, but you're always going to be at that finish line saying, well, what if we did one more year?
Correct.
So,
yeah. And like sometimes like a warning sign, you see someone who's done like 4 fellowships, like, wait a minute. Don't you want to get to work someday?
Yeah, one day you got to make that jump from being a trainee to a practitioner, like solo practitioner. So.
It's a little unnerving when you get your practice on your own and you start operating and there's no one next to you to help, no one you can call, at least not on the spot. Like, to come in the room?
Yeah, to that point, I will say one thing that I think has been a positive change
Which is what?
The integrated internship now. And now it seems like...
Is that nationwide now, all programs?
It is nationwide, and all programs have their interns spend somewhere between 3 and 6 months. So it's now kind of turned into a 3.5-year residency, so to speak, but I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm curious if that, like, if residents graduate at a higher level with that, but they definitely come into the PGY2 year with way more experience. I know on my first day of PGY2, I hardly knew how to see the retina, and I'm here on a consult service. Now, the PGY2s come in and they're doing AC taps and
wow.
I think there's a lot to be said for that, but I don't know if that,
Hopefully in pseudophakic patients.
Yeah. But it's tough. What do you think? You've seen countless residents go through and graduate, and
honestly, there's something we never even talk about. There ends up being like everything else in life. I hate to say it, a bell curve.
Yeah.
Not all residents who graduate our fancy program are amazing. There's a spread. We try to push everyone as far up the bell curve as we can.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I think the people who do the best and get the most out of residency are the ones who are just self-motivated to do that. As you know, in our program, there's no spoon feeding. So if you expect to be spoon fed, you really do fall behind. You got to kind of push it yourself and make sure that you're, achieving what you need to achieve. So I think another important thing is that ultimately it is the horse, not the track, that wins the race. I think a good horse can really race on any track. So whether I did residency at UCLA, which I'm grateful for, or University of Nowhere, I think I'd be in the same position I'm in now. I don't think it makes a difference. You just don't. And I can look back, on CataractCoach.com, I got a list. If they click on the About Dr. Devgan, I have a list of all former residents that I worked with. And almost all have a hot link of where they're practicing now. Well, they're doing all kinds of things. So you can use this as a springboard at residency and then jump to anything else. And it really doesn't determine the fate of your career.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys trained at UCLA. It's fantastic. I'm glad I had an opportunity to actually scrub with each of you a lot of cases. But even if you trained at Baylor or Northwestern or stayed at WashU, you have a great outcome. You still be the same person.
It's a really interesting point, because I absolutely believe that that's true. But at the same time, I feel like, especially with the people here and the people at this table, I've been the best version of myself as a trainee that I could have been. And you never really know if that's going to be the case at some other places. So I'm very grateful for where I am. I still wouldn't go anywhere else. But you're right. I think that a lot of it comes from the individual.
Yeah, it has to come from within, for sure.
Yeah, there's opportunities everywhere, but it's up to you to take.
So yeah, you got to be self-motivated. I think is really the important thing, and then you keep running afterwards. I learned by making those videos. I had a case that is not published as yet about phacomorphic glaucoma. Really interesting bilateral case sent in to me from Brazil, and the patient had bilateral same-day sequential surgery to resolve it. But I just said, before I make the voiceover for this, let me just do a deep dive and kind of let me learn everything I need to learn about this. Because I don't want to put some wrong information out there. Because when was the last time you saw a case of bilateral phacomorphic glaucoma? I've never seen one. So yeah, it's up to you to kind of do some homework and make sure about that. Now, how do we select for good residents? This is a tough question, because now we're in the era of USMLE Step 1 score, grades are not given anymore, it's pass-fail, AOA is deemed to be like out the door.
And post-COVID interviews are done over Zoom. You don't even get to meet the applicants in person. So I don't know. Yeah.
So we were talking with a particular program director who was just kind of going through the struggles of what's involved in finding the right trainee or the right set of trainees. And it seems really, really challenging, because not only are you looking for individuals that have earned their own, they've earned it by merit, but you're looking for a group of people that are going to work very well together, people who've never worked with each other. And I think it's really hard. I don't envy that position at all. I think it's really, really challenging. I'm not really sure what I would recommend, but I do think that somehow our program directors have put together a group of people that get along very, very well with each other. But how they do it, I'll never really know.
I love your interview question of what is your ideal day in residency. I think it's a unique way to kind of get into the minds of the applicant and kind of see what are their priorities, and especially the priorities around training. And I know you've told some stories about good and bad answers to that question.
Yeah.
So,
your ideal day of residency, you should be describing the program at which you're interviewing.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to find, right?
Yeah, it's tough when you're, doing pass-fail for everything, and it's a little tougher to weight past experiences of applicants in that way. I'm hopeful that interviews and things will go back to being in person too. I feel like I can't imagine programs really feeling like they can get to know applicants through, a 1-hour Zoom session, as opposed to having them be there in front of you for multiple interviews.
So continuing on that same topic, what are your pros? If there's some med students who listen to this, what are your pros for getting into a reasonable program or a program that, suits your personality?
Yeah, so I think, again, as we were talking about before, it's, I think, really, really important to find a good mentor. I think that's huge. You want to find someone who is going to go to bat for you with your letters, someone who's going to support you, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. Personally.
Sure. What about doing an away rotation, the programs you really love?
I've heard different things. I personally didn't do any away rotations.
I didn't either, but that's along another generation.
Yeah, I've heard that they can help you and they can also hurt you. So again, I don't have any personal experience doing away rotations, but I don't know if they're absolutely
I
necessary.
think it could be helpful. I did an away rotation, and I kind of learned from my away rotation that the style of that program really wasn't for me, even if it was a great program and a well-renowned program. I didn't have an away rotation at UCLA, but one of the things I think maybe is helpful for applicants is to figure out what kind of learner you are. How do you perform best? Because if you are the type of person who is looking for something a little bit more spoon-fed, or maybe you're on the opposite side of the spectrum. For me, I felt like I was going to do best somewhere where the accountability ultimately fell on me to make myself the best resident, the best surgeon, as opposed to having someone else kind of walk me through that. So that was one of the things I loved about UCLA. But yeah, knowing your learning style and knowing the style of the program, and either gaining that from mentors or gaining that from away, or
What about the balance of learning versus just work? I mean, do you need to do umpteen thousand individual injections to learn how to do it? And so at what point does it become like, okay, maybe I'm not learning anymore, I'm just kind of cranking through a big volume?
Yeah, that's difficult, but that's a difficult question. I think it's at some point though, your job is to take care of the patient that's in front of you, and you don't necessarily, always have the opportunity to be blessed with, a patient in front of you that is on a textbook, and then the next patient is the next page, and the next patient's the next page. You have to see what there is, and you have to do the works. And so I think that repetition is helpful no matter how many times you got to do it. So I personally don't mind. I think it's representative of what it's like to be a practicing ophthalmologist to some degree too. So I'm a fan of just doing the work and then using your own time to learn about the things that you may not have been able to see during the day.
I agree. I think it just kind of teaches you how to become more efficient, and I think that's huge for private practice.
That's true. Yeah, even if maybe you're not learning something new and on every injection, you're right. Like we've had tough days where you have to get through umpteenth injections, and it teaches you how to become efficient. And there's probably intangible benefits too of how do you interact with patients on a short time scale like that. Sure. And even if you're not learning anything about technique, there's probably stuff that you're learning that maybe you just don't pick up.
Yeah, by being there, you're learning it. I mean, and you'll end up doing the same thing in practice. In practice, it's actually, one of the dumbest things I ever said. I've said many, but when I was a senior resident, I said, I can't wait till I'm in private practice, because it'll be so much easier. Like, that is so naive, because it's the exact opposite. You'll look back on residency like, yeah, that was an amazing time, and honestly, it was pretty easy. And then during it, it's like, wow. Like I always say, residency is kind of like 11th grade. At the time, you thought 11th grade was so hard and so many AP classes, and now you're like, dude, 11th grade is a walk in the park. It's nothing. So, should we check applicants for dexterity? And I'll tell you a thing you may not know is that 20 years ago, ENT applicants, ENT residency, they did soap carvings. I don't know if you know this. They give you a bar of soap, and then give you like some sort of blade, and you have to carve it in front of them to check your manual dexterity. This is no joke. Yeah. So should we check for this? Should we have all applicants, if they're doing back in person, come do like some quick run on the icy?
That's an interesting question because there's a residency program in ophthalmology that tests everyone's stereo acuity on the day of the interview, which I find interesting, and they actually have some published research.
Which program is that?
UT Southwestern in Dallas, and I think he's no longer the program correct.
But what if you have, let's say, less stereo? Let's say you had some prior strabismus or whatever, and you don't have great stereo. Is that against the American with Disabilities Act? No, I'm serious. This is the world we live in. It sounds crazy to think like, wait, don't you want your eye surgeon to have stereoscopic vision? And I know, but
I don't know what he does with the information, but it's an interesting question. And I think there's maybe some ways you can subtly pick up maybe on a person's dexterity by kind of figuring out what their hobbies are. So, it's certainly true that people who play video games tend to be better in the operating
published
room.
studies now.
Yeah.
Published studies have shown that the video game players actually do in the medical or surgical literature. There's studies.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting. So someone maybe who is someone who does needlework, or someone who
Calligraphy or plays an instrument,
wood carving, things like that. I mean, you may be able to assume that they take dexterity seriously because it's something that they do for fun. But hard to say. I really don't know.
What's been your experience? Like, if you've seen residents who maybe have a lower level of dexterity naturally or whatnot, with good self-reflection and good work, to those residents, or are those residents able to?
Yeah, absolutely. Depends on your drive. I'll give you a different example. Take a step away from ophthalmology. If I say, I want to see you do 10 free throws in a row, basketball, this thing called 10 in a row. There are some people, like maybe you, Alex, where you could just give you a weekend, you're good. But me, maybe it'll take a month. And so there's a difference there. But if you have the same goal, I could do it. And so a resident has to have that drive to say, okay, if the goal is the Devgan 10 sutures of 10 on nylon, 10 minutes. Okay, it may take me a year, but I will do it. And then they can. But the natural ability, there's some people maybe who pick that up in a month. So I think people come from the full spectrum of abilities, but I think with enough drive, I could probably teach almost anyone to do 10 sutures of 10 nylon, 10 minutes.
There's an old adage that's a good experienced instructor can teach an average surgeon to become good and a good surgeon to become great, but you can't teach an average surgeon to become great. I don't know if you think that that's true or not.
I don't know. I think you got to be your own boss here and just kind of be your own, rip your own whip, crack your own whip, and just have that drive. I mean, if you really have that drive, I think you can do it. And then I kind of think on the positive side that, if you really can, if you have that drive, just do it. Just do it. So I don't know what the right answer is there. I don't know. How about work-life balance in your programs? That's actually a really, I've made mistakes in the past of being really too work-driven and not having enough kind of enjoyment of life balance. Certainly fix that now. But in the past, I struggled with that. You guys, how do you manage that in residency?
It's very hard. Our program is very front-loaded in the call responsibilities and the duties of each resident. I feel like now our quality of life is really quite terrific. But it was hard at the beginning, and I think that it's difficult because residency is such a short period of your life. It's such a short chapter that if it becomes too easy, then you didn't really take advantage of all the opportunities that were presented to you. But if it's too challenging, then you might not make it through. So the balance is really hard. I personally am very, very fortunate to have a very supportive wife, and I have a dog, and I do what I can with him in my free time, and I found that to be very, very helpful and productive. And but even still, it's tough. We at our program have residents that have kids, and they make it through just fine. But and still, you really do need to find the right balance because it's such a short chapter of your life that if you don't make the absolute most of it, then you're going to have even fewer building blocks at the end of it than you would have otherwise. So
I think you're right that I always say that the purpose of residency is not the diploma on the wall. That doesn't do anything. It's for you to squeeze every drop of hands-on and knowledge and experience out of that brief period of time.
Yeah, you're never going to be spoon-fed cases with supervision ever again. And so I like taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's been kind of tough overall. It sort of fluctuates. I think it's sort of fluctuated over the last couple of years. First year again was a little bit harder, but I think really the important thing is kind of scheduling your time in. So I like to exercise, so I try to do that once a day, and so I just schedule it in like it's something I have to do. And so I think for the things that you really want to do, you just make time for it, and you just prioritize it, and you can probably get it done.
Are we training enough residents? There's still about the same number of residency spots every year, 450, 60, for probably the last 20 plus years. And with our population getting older and growing, if you look at the volume of, let's say, cataract surgery done in the US, it's growing every year more and more. Are we training enough ophthalmologists? And not all ophthalmologists are going to work full time even. So is 460 new ophthalmologists a year enough? What do you think?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I think there probably is definitely a shortage of ophthalmologists across the country, but this has become more clear as we've started to look for jobs, but certain markets are, in a sense, saturated with ophthalmologists, whereas large parts of the country are, begging you to come out there, basically. So, and I know this is a problem within all specialties of medicine, but somehow bridging that gap, I don't know if that means more ophthalmologists is going to really fix that problem, though.
Yeah, I don't know how you just magically start training more ophthalmologists without diluting the quality of the training programs that are already there. There's only so many cases that trainees across the country can do.
Sure.
And ophthalmology is a very competitive and highly coveted specialty that really sets an excellent standard in medicine. And if you overnight decide to double the number of residency spots, then in a way you may be diluting the quality of the profession. But on the other hand, it's very difficult because, from like a political and legislative perspective, optometrists outnumber ophthalmologists like somewhere between 4 and 7 to 1, depending on the state that you're in. And so having, a bit of a bigger voice would be really, really nice. I'm not sure I know the answer to that question because there's pros and cons for more and less ophthalmologists. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that question.
Do you learn about the business of ophthalmology? How do you do that? Because residency, you certainly learn the basic sciences. You got the academies or BCSC books. You go through all, 5,000 pages of that, commit that to memory. You do a lot of hands-on, learn a lot of surgery, a lot of procedures. But that doesn't teach actually how to practice. How do you pick up these pearls of how to practice ophthalmology?
I don't know how anyone does it. We were so fortunate to learn from you, and there's still a couple of faculty at our program that have part-time gigs in private practice who are able to help impart a little bit of knowledge in that space. But my dad's an ophthalmologist, and I still don't feel prepared for being in practice. I don't understand. I don't know all the nuances of running a business or marketing yourself. It's something that you just don't learn. We've been very, very fortunate to gain a couple of pearls from you, but you've also done a really, really terrific job of getting us involved with industry. Several times in residency, we've had dinners with representatives from major corporations that are involved in ophthalmology, so that's been helpful. But even still, it's not. I think some of it's just on the job training too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm coming out not feeling super great about that area, and I think that's kind of a common sentiment.
Well, that's because if you're joining a group, you'll have mentors there in your group who can, kind of show you the ropes and show you the way. Just, keep that open mind, that enthusiasm, that thirst for more knowledge. I think you'll do great. And speaking of the consulting stuff, I think one thing I really encourage people to do, I made a video of this. You should get involved in ophthalmic consulting, working with the companies. Anyone have interest in that?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I'm interested to hear how I know you used to have even more consulting as part of your,
Yeah, things changed a lot. So, in the consulting world, we started off first that it was really a tremendous amount of fun. I mean, the idea is you got to work with the companies to basically develop the future of your specialty. To work with the optical engineers or the fluidic engineers to go through the the next generation phaco machine. Because there are ophthalmologists who are involved in helping them decide, hey, what should we do next for Phaco machine? So I think it's a neat thing to be involved in. Certainly, you don't do it for the money. Since they've passed the pharma guidelines and the AdvaMed guidelines, which are the ones for the device companies, basically saying that you'll be paid for your time. And we're not going to retire on this. But I think the nice part is being able to just influence the future of your field.
Yeah, it also seems like it's a very useful way to stay engaged and remain, active, because this field is, rapidly changes. I feel like there's a new device every 6 months, and it's easy to become complacent and just stick to what you know and do what you do, but then you may not be doing your patients a service. So it's a helpful way to, I think, stay active and engaged, and it's something I look forward to, especially as an aspiring glaucoma specialist. It just seems like there's a new mixed device every couple of months, and there's always something to learn, always something to follow. So I really like that passion for finding the next best thing. I think it's really infectious.
Yeah, speaking of which, so where do you think, all right, you're doing glaucoma now, we'll call you Dr. Glaucoma. So where's the field going? Is it just more and more MIGS devices, or what do you think?
I don't know, but it does seem like angle surgery is a really hot topic right now, and whether it be with MIGS or now there's a term called MIBS, minimally invasive bleb surgery, which is, I guess, in reference to like the Zen or the Preserflow microshunt. But either way, it's really exciting, and I think that it's becoming more and more accepted that cataract surgery, with or without MIGS, is a very, very legitimate intervention for patients with mild glaucoma. And the dogma that glaucoma needs to be tubes and trabs is just not necessarily the case. I think the role of cataract surgery and minimally invasive glaucoma surgery is becoming a lot more apparent, and it's a lot more exciting. It's really making meaningful difference in patients' lives, and it's what drew me in. I think the people who are really at the forefront of this particular industry are so exciting, and I'm really excited to be able to offer a lot to patients, even those who have very mild glaucoma. So I think it's a great field right now. Everyone's looking for a glaucoma specialist, and I'm really grateful for the program where I'll be at WashU. They seem to just do a terrific job exposing their fellows to everything: glaucoma surgery, anterior segment surgery, MIGS surgery, cataract surgery. The breadth of the field seems like it's growing every day.
Oh, that's fantastic. You think you'll practice just glaucoma as a specialty, or will you end up still doing kind of the whole spectrum of ophthalmology, general comprehensive care?
I hope to do everything. My plan has always been to do everything, and that's one of the reasons why I was drawn to the particular fellowship where I matched, is because it was a glaucoma fellowship that encourages trainees to be good at cataract surgery and be able to, do IOL exchanges and repair,
complex,
and just do it all. I think there's always a need for ophthalmologists to be as good as they can be, and so I plan on doing everything, absolutely everything I can.
Where do you guys see yourself 5-10 years from now? Hard to predict, obviously, but what do you think?
Yeah, I hope to be in a private practice scenario, hopefully really starting to build out a niche in like a cataract refractive type practice, and I hope that I'm continuing to learn as a surgeon and continuing to push myself up that learning curve, and hopefully having a bit of a better understanding of the business and the environment of ophthalmology that comes with being in private practice. I think those first 5 years are probably really critical.
Yeah, you'll learn more in your first couple years in practice than in like the previous 10 years of your life.
Yeah.
You learn a lot. Where do you think you'll be, Alex, in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully at the same practice I'll be signing with in, probably the next week or two. But we'll see. I know that's always kind of an iffy thing potentially. But hopefully, like a partner at least. And again, hopefully continuing to grow my surgical skills, like Michael said.
Yeah, the first job is kind of like the first girlfriend or boyfriend. It's awesome if that's like the one you're with for life. But hey, sometimes it doesn't always work out. If that's the case, don't sweat it. It's okay. Life will go on. You'll find your own fit or whatever happens. But when I interviewed Dick Lynch, he had an interesting way of looking at it. He said 5-year plans. Multiple. He's on his 10th 5-year plan on ophthalmology or something. So amazing. But the nice part is because he's 10 years ahead is kind of hard to predict. But 5 years ahead, okay, if I can accomplish, let's say, these things in the next 5 years, and then kind of reset that every 5 years, makes a whole lot of sense. And like what you were saying earlier about today's dogma, when I interviewed Osher said, remember, today's dogma may be tomorrow's dog food.
That's a good mind.
Great.
He's a funny guy.
What do you think are the most important things to be looking at in a first job? I mean,
You know what? It's so simple, you'll laugh. When you meet the people, ask yourself, would you enjoy going on a vacation with them? You as a couple, their couple, your family, their family, would you enjoy like a week vacation together? If that's like the case, that's a reasonable person then. Then your gut's telling you like, yeah, that's a cool person. I'd like to spend time with that person and I'll learn a lot. And so that person's probably going to give you a really bitter shake because ultimately at the end of the day, you can't predict anything and with exacting, precision. There's a famous retina surgeon here in LA, David Boyer, who's really one of the pillars of the Ophthalmic Society in LA, brilliant guy. And he had a very important point. He says, any contract you need to be able to make with your partners, it shouldn't be more than a couple of pages. You have to be reasonable partners, just lay down the guidelines. You can't possibly list everything. So once in my career, years back, someone offered me a position and he offered a contract that was hundreds of pages. And then I was talking to Dr. Boyer about it. He's like, you don't even have to read it. The answer's no. So I think ultimately just finding a decent person is probably more important than anything else. Especially, and then also finding a partner to join where the age gap is helpful or appropriate. So if you have an age gap where the partner's 20 years ahead of you, you want different things. If you're 33 and your partner's 53 and then the senior partner's 73, well, the 73-year-old's kind of ready to call it a day and spend more time doing non-ophthalmology things. That's a good position. That person probably is not in the mood to do tough cases anymore, or maybe even operate at all. The 53-year-old also has kind of probably found a more focused specialty in the field, like maybe I like to do just glaucoma stuff, or maybe I want to do more of the complicated corneas, or I like doing refractive cataract surgery, and then passing on the other things then down the chain. And so having that appropriate, if you're joining a group and you're 33 and the group you're joining, the partners are 35 and 37, they're kind of all in the same part of life you're in. And so the other good point to remember is the seeds you sow in your first 10 years of practice, kind of the crops you're gonna reap or benefit from the rest of your career. So really crank in those years and get things done.
So what are your thoughts then on solo practice? Is that just a pipe dream nowadays?
No, you can do anything. I was talking to a former resident who's Wang Chan Lin, who's now in Las Vegas. Fantastic resident. He finished residency, did a cornea fellowship at Duke. He got a job working for someone else in Las Vegas, did that for a few years. Didn't work out, wasn't his cup of tea, so he decided to open from scratch. I talked to him recently, he said it was the best thing he ever did. Yeah, it's not easy, nothing in life's easy. But he said it was the best thing ever. And there's a nice thing to have that autonomy there. But I think ultimately a group, especially a smaller group, is probably a better thing so you can share responsibilities. And then, one of the big expenses, you're going to have an open clinic, right? You're going to have a clinic that's, probably open 5 days a week, maybe even more. What if you don't want to work all those days? Or what if you're in the OR the whole day? You don't want your office your clinic to sit empty. Let other people use it too. So having at least a few partners, I think, is a very helpful thing.
When you finished residency, were you in a group to begin with? When did you make the transition to solo practice?
July 1 after residency.
So I guess my question to you would be, do you think that the way you approach solo practice as a brand new attending is something that someone could do now?
Yes.
The barriers are just...
No, you absolutely can. There's no barrier. You can achieve anything you want. Don't be a naysayer. Don't doubt yourself. If you want to open up shop and start from scratch, I promise you can do it. And you can work hard and you can make it happen. I promise you can succeed. There's no question. You just have to go out there and crank and do it. It's not easy at the beginning.
Yeah, what did you find were some of the biggest challenges? Was it just
the
getting
biggest
people in the door?
That exactly, bingo. The hardest part of practice is not the surgery or the knowledge of which white dot syndrome that is in the retina. That's not the hard part. The hard part is literally getting the patients in the door. And I think probably the best thing you do there is is giving the same high level of care or treatment that you'd want to receive. I really try to give every patient my absolute best. Like, here's my email, here's my cell. If anything is less than perfect, you let me know, I will take care of that. And I really sweat the details for this surgery. I'm very, very focused on giving them the same treatment I'd want for myself. And I think that they feel that, they know that. And then you'll establish yourself, you'll establish your reputation, not only among patients there too, but even in the community. There's a young ophthalmologist in LA who did a cornea fellowship and just seemed like a real great guy. Talked to him in the surgery center. It's like, let me set up some patients. And you contradict. You think you don't have to take the guy out for dinner. No, I don't want to have dinner with him. I'm going to send you some patients. Just take great care of them, and then I'm happy to send you more. So it's important to have that abundance mentality. I think that abundance mindset, as opposed to the scarcity mindset that only so few pay. Nah, please.
Sort of a glass half full rather than a glass half empty.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it, because there are no shortage of patients. I promise you that there's an unlimited supply of patients who need ophthalmic care. Unlimited. And so if you really want to, you can go out there and yes, you can get that. Yes, you can access that. And sometimes it takes multiple jobs. I used to work a lot. When I was first 5 years in practice, gosh, I worked obviously Monday through Friday, but starting super early. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I did a night clinic till 8 p.m. And I also worked Saturday mornings, and that morning on Saturday was supposed to end like around 1 or 2, and usually went about 3 or 4. So that was how much I worked. So I worked hard.
What do you think about when you're looking at your first contract, trying to weigh making sure you get a fair shake versus finding a position where you know that you can blossom as a clinician? Like, is it more important for you to find somewhere where you think you can become a better surgeon, or is it, how do you balance that?
Even if you join a practice with a big group, let's say you join, let's say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 doctors, and you say, okay, maybe one of the doctors, the senior doctors, can spend one case showing you how to do this in the OR. But he or she cannot proctor you every case you do for the first year. That's not reasonable. But there used to be an assistant fee in cataract surgery, believe it or not, which was way more than the surgeon fee today. That's a whole other story. But there is no assistant fee anymore. And so that's not a reasonable ask. So I think you'll end up being a better surgeon by doing what you're doing now. I mean, people may not know. I've got surgical videos from each of you. And I think each of you has one on CataractCoach already. You watch that? Wait a minute, this looks very familiar. Like, wait a minute. But you'll keep learning. I think your best hope is to be in a group that's going to just treat you right. And also ask yourself, what does the practice want? The practice wants you to come there and obviously be a great team player, and you're already there, and have great skills, you're already there. But in addition, they want you to help grow their practice. So not just come and take their overflow, which is why they're hiring you probably, because they have an overflow of patients that they just can't service enough. Their wait lists are too long. But to say, okay, you know what, here's how I'm going to grow this practice. And that really shows your value there. I think that's a really important thing.
Do you think that social media is crucial for new ophthalmologists coming out, trying to build a practice?
I think in your career it will be a lot more important. So most of my cataract patients are about 20 plus years older than me, 30 years older than me. Your cataract patients, if you're doing surgery today, yeah, they're really old. They're like 50 years ahead of you, right? But when you get mid-career, you're going to be operating on people who are like, who are wise to social media. So that can help to a degree, just getting the word out. But think of it this way, too, social media too is still word of mouth. Because what's more powerful, you putting an ad on social media? Not really. Or a patient's posting on social media to their friends, oh my God, I had an amazing thing, I'm so blessed. That's just essentially word of mouth. It's just the modern way of doing word of mouth. But I think it's important to get out there. With that said, I don't do obviously I do my CataractCoach things and things related to that, but that's not really geared towards patients. So I'm not doing a ton of promoting stuff online. My advertising budget per year is zero. I pay $0 a year for search engine optimizing. No. I'm not doing any sponsored ads on this side or the other. I know, that's not me.
What about starting out? Did you spend money on?
I never
Marketing?
did. I was never a big never a big advertising guy. I just don't think it worked. Because I asked myself this. If I needed like a knee replacement or an ACL surgery, would I like sit there and Google it and then click on the ad and say, I'll go to this guy who has the, wow, his website's so slick, he got a great ad. Is that what I'm going to choose? No. Probably not.
Probably ask a friend.
Right. So you're better off asking a friend, oh, you had this done, really, what happened? Okay. So I think there is a place for online reviews, but I think patients go into those online reviews after they've already kind of said, yeah, I'm probably going to go to this guy or this gal.
Yeah, I know on the topic of advertisements, some people say, I know this is true in the plastic surgery field, but in general, the amount of money you spend on ads is pretty close to the amount of money you gain. So it's like a net zero. It's a net zero.
The advertising companies are very happy though.
Yeah.
Thank you. They say thank you.
On the topic of CataractCoach, we were talking a little bit earlier about how you've had such a successful kind of entrepreneurial career. It's not just CataractCoach. You have surgical devices. You're one of the key contributors to the Lattice formula. I'm wondering if you've had any unsuccessful entrepreneurial ventures, and if you did, how did you handle them? Or do you have any friends or peers that tried something experimental and it just didn't work out?
Well, if any baseball player tells you that they bat 1,000, I probably wouldn't believe them. If they said they're batting like 350, 360, you're like, wow, you must be very good. So similarly, for those who don't play baseball, listen, if 30% or 40% of your ventures are super successful, well, that's fantastic. That's a great number too. So, the nice part too is we don't dwell on the failures, but there have been so many. If you look at even ophthalmology as a whole, there have been some that seemed like initial successes and then later weren't. There are devices that we no longer use in our field, or lasers that were invented that are no longer used, or older style IOLs, and things keep evolving, and that's okay. I think the idea is just to keep trying to innovate, keep trying to think differently, think, what can I do to make my surgical procedure better, to give better results to my patients, and then just kind of follow your passion. I don't have any rhyme or reason of which projects I choose. I just choose the projects that I enjoy. So could I do some research and some project on geographic atrophy of the macula? I probably would have to call Amani Fawzi to do my homework for me. Because she's way smarter than me. I have no idea. And I don't have a desire to really just go down and just deep dive into that topic. But I think cataract surgery, to me, cataract surgery is the world's best video game. And 3 decades, 25 years later, I still love it. And so for me, how do you make a new cataract? I gave a lecture yesterday in Utah at their state signing meeting. What a great group of ophthalmologists. And someone asked me, well, how do you just do a video every day? I'm like, I'm just passionate. It's not that much work anymore. And I said, plus after you do 1,700 of them, I kind of got it down to a science. So I'm pretty good.
I was most impressed when you showed me a queue of videos even. I
kind
of pictured you kind of doing it maybe a couple of days in advance. But
No, like I show you my desktop here, check it out. There's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ready to go on my desktop. I just got to get them uploaded. Yeah. So I have a full-on queue of at least a month usually. And if I need to put a video up sooner, I can actually shovel things around and change it, but...
Yeah, it's a lot of work. One thing I found kind of funny is that the amount of time and effort I had to spend on editing my first 30, 40 cataract surgery videos was a lot more than it is now. Now I basically just put it on 2x speed and it's a reasonable video. But for my first several cases, I was spending 30, 40, 50 minutes per video just trimming it down into something that was reasonable. So it's
something watchable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And everyone has their own format. I interviewed my podcast number 1, Bobby Osher. What an amazing guy. He's, I think, the godfather of surgical videos, of ophthalmic surgical videos. And he started his video journal of cataract and refractive surgery and now glaucoma surgery in 1985. And so back in 12 years later, 1997, 98, 99, when I was a resident until the year 2000, I would hunt for those VHS tapes and watch that. And his format was once a quarter, still is, once a quarter, he puts out a series of videos into a kind of cohesive topic. Like his latest one was on Yamane. And so he has maybe 10 or a dozen videos from various surgeons. Total length is maybe an hour or 2, and just about the one topic. He does that once a quarter. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to do something a little different. I said, you know what? I know how my brain works. I just love maybe I have short attention span. I like 5 minutes a day every day. And I think I learned the best that way. It's like, it's hard for me to break out a whole hour of time. But if I can spend 5 minutes while like I'm having a cup of coffee, that's awesome to me. And so I made the website that I'd want to watch. Kind of like golden rule again. Or same with the lectures. I gave lectures yesterday in Utah. We had a fantastic time, great panel discussion. I give exactly the same talk that I would want to hear. And I think that's really, in fact, why I'm doing these podcasts. This is like these are the topics that really interest me. And I want to be like connected more to your young mindset of, okay, we're going out into practice and what's it going to be like?
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how your phaco technique changed in your first couple of years of practice? How are you doing cataract surgery at the end of residency, and then how did your skills and preferred technique change after that?
So great question about how did my cataract surgery technique change or evolve over time. So when I was a resident, I was driven to learn phaco chop because I saw on one of Bobby Osher's tapes this guy from Japan, Nagahara, doing this chop, and I was blown away. So amazing! How could you do this? I think chop was invented by him in 94 or 5, and so I saw this tape maybe 99 or like junior year of residency, and no one at the university was doing this. In fact, today I don't know if many ophthalmologists at the university, at least UCLA, do phaco chop. And so, right, but I thought for sure that makes the most sense to me in a resident. So I actually bought a chopper when I was a resident, and they weren't as strict, so I was allowed to like flash it for every case. Right, you can't do that anymore.
Never fly.
Never fly now. But I was able to buy or bring in outside instruments. Yeah. So I brought my own. I asked my dad. I was like, I want this for my birthday. Can you buy me this chopper? And it was, I don't know, a few $100s. This little. And my daddy's okay. Enjoy whatever. But then I learned to do chop. I just watched that thing. I learned, and it was not easy. And boy, I still recall a case where I put the chopper right through the capsule. And what are you gonna do? I felt terrible, but it's how you end up learning it. And so there wasn't a really great way of learning it. No one to teach me. In fact, so I in residency they taught me at least. There were sometimes they taught you to bowl out the nucleus one-handed phaco, which I think is not really my preferred technique. That reminds me of 1987. And then some did divide and conquer. I think the most common was divide and conquer. I don't think any attending did stop and chop or chop at all.
When were choppers introduced as sort of mainstream second instruments? I mean, my understanding is that a Drysdale or like a paddle-like instrument was always
It was a psychodialysis spatula. In fact, there's still some attendings at Jules Stein at UCLA who will use a second just psychodialysis spatula. That was the common thing back in the day. I didn't see choppers become more common until probably maybe 2000-ish, somewhere around that time frame. So when I first finished, I started practice. What I do is I try to chop every case. And if I didn't get the chop, I'd make a groove, split it in half, and do stop and chop. And that's what I did until I got pretty comfortable doing chop. And then I was driven enough to kind of learn all different variants of chop. And so now, even today, I do. You see the case on CataractCoach where I'm operating. I'll do every style. It doesn't matter to me. I can do divide and conquer, stop and chop. Any type of horizontal, vertical chop, combo chop, flip it out of the bag, tilt and tumble. Kind of the only thing I probably don't do is bowl it out.
I've heard a common theme on that subject of attending or after finishing training, people become enamored with the idea of becoming faster and faster.
Oh, don't rush.
But then then they realize that it's not about speed; it's about precision. And
you're totally right. I made this mistake myself. If you look back on CataractCoach, there's a video. I have to look at which one, where I'm critiquing a surgery that I did in 2006.
Yeah.
So 6 years post-residency. And in that video, the 2006 video was obviously it's not even in HD, it was in standard def. And I critique it because at the time I thought I was so slick that I did the whole case in 3.5 minutes. And I go back and I watch it now and think, what was I thinking? Spend an extra 2 minutes and make it like beautiful. So my goal now is, yes, I want to be efficient during the surgery, but I have zero rush. And if I need a few extra minutes to do this, that, or the other, I'll definitely do it. My goal is to have the surgery as beautiful, as pretty, as precise as possible. So yeah, the incision, I'm not just going to stab it, it has to be pretty. The rexus has to be really pretty. Even the way the eye has to stay in primary as I operate, I just want to be meticulous about it. I literally want to give the same surgery that I want to receive. Like I recently did surgery. I had a video on Halloween. I had 2 ophthalmologists on whom I operated. Both cataract surgeons. One from the East Coast, one from actually outside the U.S. Both came. I did their surgery on the same day. Gave them each a video of their surgery. That's how proud I am. And it's on CataractCoach too. The video is called 2 Ophthalmologists Walk into a Surgery Center. There's no joke. That's
kind of talking about how things have changed for you over your career. How do you disclose complications to patients, and has that changed over the?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. There's a book by Bob Yosher, and it's called What I Say, and it's also Jack Parker's the second author. Fantastic book. What I Say is the title, and basically it's about ophthalmology and how you talk to patients, and he gives exact scenarios for each of these situations. How do you talk to patients, and even more specific, you have a posterior polar. How do you tell them about the specific risks that are involved there? How do you tell the patient there's a complication? So, it always helps to remember that the result of surgery is, let's say, equal parts your surgery and your technique and your technologies, and equal parts the patient's tissue, protoplasm, anatomy, and healing response. You can't always control everything. I mean, you've had a patient where you do a beautiful surgery, you look at the lens calcs, you put that lens on the eye, and for whatever reason, that lens has shifted, and now that patient has a refractive outcome that's less than ideal. Who's to blame? No one. It's the patient's tissue. So I think the easiest to be straight with the patient and tell them, most important thing is tell them, here's what happened in the surgery, here's the complication we had, and more importantly, here's how we're going to help you. Here's what we're going to do. Patients are understanding that there's no such thing as a 0% complication rate. None. No matter how good the surgeon is. But the patient just don't want to be abandoned. And so as long as you tell the patient, listen, here's the issue that happened, your tissue was very weak inside the eye, I was unable to put this lens, you wanted this toric lens, this trifocal lens, I wasn't able to do it because the tissues were weak. Or there's a complication when the posterior capsule ruptured. The good news is we got all the cataracts out, we cleaned up the prolapse vitreous, and we put a sulcus lens in. And I've chosen a lens that's, giving you a refractive outcome and say maybe best distance vision. Or maybe I'll have to go back in 3 months and do a little LASIK to clean up the astigmatism that's residual now. Because we couldn't get the astigmatism during the cataract surgery. So whatever it takes, just let the patient know, no matter what, just hang in there. I will give you my best, and I will guide you through this, and we'll get you the good vision that you want. So I think that's the key in that. And sometimes in residency, you're not taught that enough.
Yeah, sometimes I've even asked myself what constitutes a complication. I mean, you could break bag and put in a sulcus lens, and the patient could be 20/20 and very happy the very next day. So let's say you were in that scenario, what would you tell the patient, if at all? Do they need to know anything more, or if they're happy with the outcome?
I think you should tell them. I think say, hey, your tissues weren't exactly as expected, or we had this issue in your eye, and obviously we cleaned everything up. You're seeing great. Congratulations on the amazing vision, but just so you know, when we did your surgery, we had to do something a little different here. Normally we put the lens in the capture bag. In your case, we had to put we call optic capture to kind of explain. We did this tissue was weak, so we had to improvise a little bit. Good news is it's very stable, everything looks great, and you're going to do fine. But let's just watch you a little more carefully in the post-op period. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I guess, while it may seem really really great then, it may not always stay great. And if 3 months down the road the patient has chronic CME, or
Correct.
They have a lens dislocation and they're wondering,
right,
I thought everything was perfect on the first day, maybe you didn't do yourself
or have them go to somebody else, and then all of a sudden tell them, oh, you have this different lens that's normal, and
right,
that's why the last thing you would want.
Yeah, you got to be upfront with the patient. Just tell them everything. Literally, give the same treatment you want to receive. If I'm having a surgery, even if it's on my ACL, let's say, and it doesn't go quite right, I want the orthopedic surgeon to say, hey, you know what, here's the issue. Your tissue, this, and that, and the other, or we had this issue, we had to do something different. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Do you avoid the word complication, or do you
No,
like in a posterior capsule or tear, or an anterior capsular tear, something that's maybe
Well, you should. It's okay to say the word complication. That's what it is. In fact, on your op report,
mm-hmm.
on your medical legal documentation, you wrote complications, and you wrote posterior capsule rupture. So that's what it is. So I just like to be straight with the patient. Patients want to know everything, and I want to tell them everything.
Yeah, I guess nowadays too, patients can go and read their own op reports, and so if you don't disclose that there was a complication, but you wrote in the op note that there was a complication, they might have some level of distrust, I imagine. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's probably in your best interest to tell a patient everything, even if the outcome was very good.
Yeah, patients with issues or complications, hold them closer. Bring them back to the clinic. Watch them more carefully. Sometimes the gut instinct is like, oh, just return to clinic in 1 year or never. No. The opposite. Bring them closer. Do what it takes. Give them the treatment you'd want. It's just that easy. It's really not that complicated. But yeah, listen, we're all going to have complications, right? I always say the two types of ophthalmologists who never have complications are those who never operate and those who aren't quite fully truthful. And those are your complications. So, and it's interesting too. Remember this? I was telling you before we even started this podcast about a complication I had with a very, very tough case, and how for the second eye, I'm confident enough to let me have the patient go somewhere else, and maybe someone else can do a better job. And I was very upfront with the patient, and that's reasonable, because I just want the best for the patient. And I know I had a big challenge the first time. Maybe someone else has better skills and she can do it better than me. But ultimately, I just want what's best for the patient. And the other one too is, give the first sort of the benefit of the doubt. You see a patient coming in, and you look at that eye, and you see that sulcus lens, and a little bit chewed up iris, and maybe a little vigil to the wound, and you think, whoa, what happened here? Well, give the first sort of the benefit of the doubt that the tissues may be really bad. And when you do the second eye, you may have the exact same issue. So the better move there to tell the patient, be very guarded with the prognosis. For your second eye, I'm going to do it, but based on how your first eye responded to surgery, your second eye may have the same types of issues. As opposed to the bravado way of the first surgeon, he's not as good as me. I'll do a way better job with the second eye. Don't be so sure. Right?
Yeah, we find ourselves actually in a really interesting position as residents, because oftentimes when we're doing a patient's second eye, the first eye was done by a different resident sometimes. And I find it really interesting because if the other resident had to put a CTR in the first eye, you better make sure that there's a CTR available when you're doing the second eye, because you really have no idea. So I found that to be a helpful little checklist item on our kind of cataract planning is, did anything go wrong with the first eye? Because you just never really know.
Yeah. I definitely have heard your voice in my head with that same saying when I've seen first eye cases where it was a tough case, and just remind myself I should be especially cautious here, or maybe put in a ring or something.
Correct. Absolutely.
Wouldn't have normally, but here I definitely should. Let's just avoid anything.
No, I think you're 100% right. That's the smartest way of doing it. When I was a resident, we didn't have video recording available, and so what I do is one of my co-residents, John Lattis, we often did rotations where he was first and I followed him, or vice versa. And so any interesting patient, I do one eye and instead of the second eye for him. And I tell him, here's how the first eye goes. And he did the same. So it was a fantastic time.
Do you find that patients are, how do they usually take that? Are they usually grateful that you want to send them elsewhere, or are they put off by that?
It depends on the patient. Yeah. It depends on the patient. And I just say, your first eye, we had a lot of challenges. It was very, very challenging for me. And I think maybe another surgeon may be able to give you a little bit different outcome. Because ultimately, not all surgeons do the same surgery. While still cataract surgeries, the techniques are all very different. I mean, someone was asking me, how can you make so many videos just about cataract surgery? It's like, you'd be surprised. I mean, I've not run out of ideas yet for a surgery that seems pretty simple.
It's one of the best things about it, right?
Yeah,
every surgery is a little bit different, and you can always get better.
The variety. But one of the tough things is, when you get a complicated case, like the case from yesterday, where a surgeon normally does 5, 6, 7 minute cataracts, beautifully, lines them up 4 an hour in one operating room. That one case took 57 minutes. And so the tough part there is wow, that I admire the surgeon for spending the time to make it right for his patient. And no matter how long it took. But the rest of the whole OR schedule that's thrown off, and hopefully your patients are nice and not asking you, I've been waiting for an extra hour, doctor.
And on top of your mindset too, after having a case like that, I know when I had my first complication and then I had, a case right after that, and it's how do you psych yourself up to
Get back on the horse.
Yeah, like, I can do this. I can do this, but I don't know.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to. It's okay to. There's a good way I have about compartmentalizing. You got to compartmentalize. And in the video, I talk about a couple of ways of compartmentalizing. One of it is, yes, of course, I have in my own private life this relationship issue, family issue, financial issue, health issue, whatever issue you have. But you have to compartmentalize that, so now when you're in the operating room, it's just you and that patient and that eye and that surgery, and that's all you're going to focus on. Similarly, though, you got to compartmentalize when, okay, we just recovered from a 57-minute case with a lot of complications, a lot of issues. Give yourself a moment. Take a little bathroom break, a water break, a coffee if you need it, or whatever, and then come back and meditate a little bit if you need to, but just get back in the game and compartmentalize that prior case and focus everything on the next case. It's that important. Remember, every surgery we do changes the way the patient sees the world every waking moment for the rest of their life.
Can I ask a random question?
Of course.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of rituals you do, like the morning of your award days, or just things that you know?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
I've had juniors and med students ask me this, and I'm like, no, not really. I'm curious to hear what you say.
So my pregame routine, it's actually pretty simple. So my big award days Mondays. I like to sleep early on Sundays. So Sundays, I like to go get in bed. I like to go a nice long evening walk or something, just to kind of just to chill out a little bit, and then come sleep early. So I like to be in bed by about 8:30 at night. I wake up at 4 a.m. then. So about 7.5, 8 hours of good sleep. Wake up at 4 a.m. I leave home at 4:30. Get to the surgery center at 5 a.m. And I'm not scheduled to cut the first eye or do the first case till about 6, or maybe just slightly before 6. But I like to be there way early so I can just get my things in order. Here's what I do. Open the trunk of my car, get out my big box of charts and my big surgical bag. I change shoes. I like to wear surgical clogs in the operating room because I like to kick off my shoes for every case. So I'll take off my shoes that I was wearing, leave them in the trunk, and in my trunk I permanently have a nice pair of these rubber clogs that I like. So I'll go to the surgery center, check in. We have our whole process there where they'll check my temperature, the COVID things, and whatever, and okay. And then I go in, change into the surgery center scrubs, and get prepared and this and that. I like to then pre-scrub. So I'll go and scrub my hands. Spend a good amount of time just kind of relaxing and then scrubbing my hands. Thinking about some of the cases that I have coming up, and what the challenges I'm going to face. And even like the night before I was going to bed, I was probably in bed thinking about I put my phones away, no device, no electronic devices. I'm thinking about, all right, here I got this tough case tomorrow, how am I going to approach that case? Kind of playing it out in my head. And then after I pre-scrub, I go into my operating room. I like the microscope set up where I want it. I adjust the oculars to what I like. A little bit of myopia dialed in. I make sure that the oculars are clean. My big wide PD is dialed in. I like there's no extension on the scope. I like it just straight as it is. I don't like the special extensions. And then I also make sure that the focus of the camera is the same as my microscope oculars. So I can have nice sharp video. Set up to go to the camera. Set up the camera thing. Zero it, clean out the white balance. Make sure the colors are appropriate. Do all those things too. So I'll do that as well. Then I'll go and I usually paste a list of my cases up on the wall. I just tape it to the wall. And I list them out. I make that sheet myself. And it shows the various eyes. I've shown this on CataractCoach before. And basically it shows it. So I put the list on the wall here behind the patient. So the right eye's on this side, left eye's on this side. And then when I look at that sheet, I can say, okay, every eye, that's where the astigmatism is. Like, this is kind of my game plan, my note for that case. And anytime they bring me a lens, I confirm it by looking at that sheet, and I know exactly, because I made that sheet, I know that's for sure correct. Then that's all set up, then I'll go meet the first patient. And so meet the first patient. I actually meet every one of my patients before surgery. Before you get any sedation on board, before the anesthesiologist is there, I'll come say hi to you. I'll confirm with you. Hey, good morning, Mrs. X. Just confirming we're doing your right eye today. We're doing that monofocal toric lens to fix your astigmatism, and we're giving you the best distance vision. That means fingertips to far away, pretty good without glasses, but certainly fingertips are closer. You'll put on some over-the-counter, +2 readers. Yes, that's correct. Thanks. Then if it's toric, I may have to do some markings on the eye, whatever else. And so then obviously we still do the paperwork that you do, which is you still have to update an HEP, believe it or not, even in private practice. And I got to sign, the paperwork, whatever, for the patient. So then that's all set up. And then I'll tell the patient a little about the surgery, and I don't confuse them too much. I'll make it simple. I'll say, your only job in the surgery is to lie there and do nothing. And they say, I think I can do that. That's pretty easy. Okay. I say, when we go to the operating room, we'll just do some preparation. You'll see some bright lights, do some cool water. That's all the prep. That's it. The surgeon will have no idea. I'll probably say we're done with surgery, and you'll probably say to me, hey, didn't even know you started. And literally that's how and we just have a clockwork. So the anesthesiologist gives appropriate amount of sedation, the right timing intervals, and it's easy. Usually that's a milligram per percent just before wheeling back to the operating room, and then about a milligram as soon as we're in the operating room, something of this nature. And so patients have a very nice outcome. So that's kind of the process I go through for every case. And I like to just really focus on that. I don't have any other distractions. I don't drink a coffee in the morning. This is a rare exception for me today here. I have to operate NPO. I'll maybe have a glass of water, but I don't like to eat any food in the morning. I like to have an empty stomach. I think I just operate better that way. And then I know my best time to operate for cataract, or intraocular, is mornings. I don't like to do cataracts like 3 or 4 p.m. I like to do it like my A games until 2 p.m. Perfect. Feel great. First case can feel as good as the last.
What about at the end of the day? Do you reflect on the cases, or
I do.
difficult ones, or
yeah, for sure. So then then after that, usually I do LASIK on Mondays. So after those OR cases for cataract, then I'll go do LASIK cases, and then I'll come home, and on the drive home, usually I'll reflect on those cases. Which ones were interesting? Which ones can I use for CataractCoach? Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't that interesting, then the next week I just write over the videos and keep doing it. But yeah, I definitely reflect on. I still watch game day footage now. I want to keep learning. I'm not stopping learning. Mm-hmm. No way. So I want to watch that case and say, whoa, that was wild. Or, oh, this would be a great video. So I still do it. Mm-hmm. And this is tens of thousands of cases later.
Do you think you're a rare exception to that? Are most established surgeons doing that, you think? Or
I think most are not. Yeah. I think I'm just super passionate about what I do, and I have an interest in that, and so I think it's different. I think I think most of them, I'll probably see more as a job. Go there, get the job done, and then all right, we're done.
Yeah, what percentage of practicing ophthalmologists who are, say, 10 years in are still recording all of their cases?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know a great answer there, but I hope a lot of them are. Yeah. Certainly people who watch CataractCoach, you're watching because you like to learn more. You want to learn more surgical techniques here. You want to learn and improve your game in perpetuity. And so I think that's smart. And it only helps you. So there are a lot of people who don't. You're correct.
I just find that oftentimes maybe in the middle of the case, I'll make note to myself like, oh, this is something I need to work on, or I need to get better at this. But there's nothing like watching it back.
For sure.
I hope that I continue to record.
No, you will.
Yeah, we're watching a video of someone having already done what you're about to try and do for the first time. So I really appreciate when people record videos, because sometimes we've between the three of us, we've done maybe 450 cataracts, and that is nothing close to the number of bizarre things we're going to see in the rest of our lives. So it's really helpful to be able to have at least seen online an example of someone handling a bizarre moment in the middle of a case. I really appreciate it.
Well, the beauty there is you compress the learning curve. Yeah. Like one of the ones I show in CataractCoach is the fake a wound burn. And there was a resident who sent me a video about a week or two after I published the fake wound burn video. And he said, look, I had the same white smoke sign on the phaco tip because the needle was clogged. And I pulled out of the eye immediately because I remember I saw in CataractCoach that a white smoke sign that indicates an impending phaco wound burn. He said, I came out of the eye, lo and behold, tip was clogged. Flushed it, went back, had a normal routine case. He says, wow. He says, thank you. And I was like, oh, I said, even better, thank you. The patient thanks you. Because you had that devotion to learning so much, your patient had a better outcome. Now your patient sees great instead of having 10 diopters of irregular astigmatism.
Yeah, we're spoiled because, back, even 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't that resource. So I don't know. How did you do that?
There was a lot of, there were still a lot of videos available through OSHA's thing, which was fantastic. But yeah, a lot of it was just kind of trial and error. It really was trial and error. And I think this is we're in a much better phase now where we can really learn and from the comfort of your own phone, anyone on the planet, you can watch this video and learn it. You just have to have the drive and desire to do that. I think the difference too is I don't see ophthalmology as a job. I'm not clock in, clock out, get my check, do my work. It's a passion. I love what I do. It is not even work. There are times when I'm on vacation, and I think, gosh, it is a Monday. Wish I was out there. My family just thinks, are you crazy? We're like, look at this beautiful view. Look at we're enjoying. I know, but I like operating.
A little crazy, but
But I like it. I love surgery.
when you were asking about work-life balance, I was thinking that one of the things that helps with work-life balance is if you love your work. Then
What do you think are some of the most rewarding things about attending residence, and likewise some of the most frustrating things about attending residence?
Honestly, the best is seeing the residents blossom into like such accomplished and just fantastic surgeons in the community, helping so many people. I met a resident yesterday, Austin Woolley, when I was in Utah from a couple years ago. He was probably he's 2 years ahead of you. So he was a senior when you were first year.
Yeah.
Fantastic. He's doing a great job helping so many patients. He was telling me about he did a MSICS case, which he was unable to do in residency. He was able to line one up. He had the COVID issues and all that. But luckily, he was able to do one in practice. Yeah, so I did the CataractCoach videos, and I had the patient a beautiful outcome. The pride that I have, that I literally said, I told him, I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. And then even another story, I was there yesterday, and I was hearing a fantastic speaker from WashU in St. Louis. Stephen Couch, who's a renowned orbital surgeon specializing he gave a lecture on Graves orbitopathy, which I learned so much from, and he is an artist surgically. For a guy who doesn't do zero plastics or orbit or whatever. And I was just talking to him, and I was texting him, texting Grant Moore, who was a former resident for a couple years back, who's now doing oculoplastics in Arizona. And Grant Moore did his fellowship in Utah at a program that that Dr. Couch knew, and Dr. Couch knows of Grant. I was like, wow, I'm just so proud. So I told Grant too, like, wow, I'm so proud. I'm talking with oculoplastics. I said, oh yeah, Grant Moore, I know him. He's fantastic. I was like, wow. So that's probably the best part. Or I told you, the most fun for me is mentoring people after the culmination of their training. Mm-hmm. Like talking to Mon Lin in Las Vegas about, the practice and what he's doing now, and amazing. That's what I'm most proud of. It's like almost like having 100 kids, right? To get to see them doing their own things and being successful, that makes me super happy. In fact, I'm planning like a little mini road trip this spring. I'm going to go to Las Vegas. CC, we have a resident or two there. Utah, a couple residents there. Then we go to New Mexico, get a bunch there. Then I'm going to do Arizona, a few more, and then head back home. So I'll have a fun time visiting the residents. So that's probably the best part. The most frustrating part with residents is residents who aren't their own toughest critic, who don't push themselves to learn more and more and more. So I'm definitely your friend after residency, but I would say during residency, I'm not your friend, because your friends accept you as you are. I think you can be way better than you are. So let me be your mentor or your coach or your whatever, but not necessarily just like your buddy. Because I got to tell you like it is. If that's a terrible incision, it's a terrible incision. Like one of my things the other was, I said, okay, tell the resident, you made that incision. I said, rate your incision. The resident's like, B+. I'm like, more like D-. Let's be honest here. So I think that's it. I think you have such an amazing potential. Kind of the neat part is you just don't know how amazing your future's going to be. You just don't realize at the time. Because I was there too.
After you're kind of going through residency and then attending residency for 20 plus years, like how has residency changed over that time?
It's changed a lot. And the business of ophthalmology on the academic side, at least some programs, may have gotten a little bit in the way. When I was a resident at UCLA, we operated at UCLA at Jules Stein. So the UOA first floor clinic there in Jules Stein was all resident run, and professors would then come volunteer there, or spend X portion of their time, maybe a half day every other week, or whatever it was, to attend residents there. And then if you saw an interesting case, you'd book that with an attending, and the attending there at UCLA would do his or her lineup for the day, and then your case would be added on. And so you got to do neat things, and maybe you didn't do the whole case, but you got to do a good portion of it. But I remember even doing cases with transplant with a cornea attending that you found in that case, or enucleation with a plastic attending. And so that was fantastic, but that changed. And part of it was that maybe the business side of it, you could do more billings through there if it wasn't a resident, because residents then has to be signed by an attending, otherwise you can't bill for it. The attending has to examine the patient too, but hey, maybe we can just fill it up with fellows or young associate physician diplomats or whatever the word is, and they can just crank through the patients and we'll get paid more. But then what happened is, then now for many years, residents do almost minimal or zero cases at UCLA. Now they're trying to bring it back and maybe do a couple here and there, but ultimately, for full-time faculty, hello, these are your residents. Don't just say, no, residents only operate at the outside hospitals, which are the county hospitals and the VAs. It also brings up a very important question, which I don't know the answer to. So I'm going to ask a question, but I don't have a great answer. The question is it right that patients at a county facility or VA hospital are getting treatment by someone who's still in training, not board certified? Whereas the patients who now go to the university for us in Westwood, at UCLA, have the attending level, professor level, do their surgery instead? That's a big question.
Yeah, it's a sticky question. I don't know. As a trainee, I think about that, and on one hand, I think sometimes I tell myself, well, maybe this patient wouldn't have access to care if it wasn't me or Alex or Gio or one of our co-residents doing the cases, but I don't know.
There's no right answer. It's tough.
Yeah, stuff. I find it especially challenging with the veteran population too. I mean, I don't mean to elevate one group of individuals over another, but it's a big pill to swallow that there's people out there that put their lives on the line for many, many years, and their cataract surgeries are being done by us, and it's just a little different. But at the same time, I'm super grateful that there are people out there that are accepting of that, because that's how we become good ophthalmologists. So without that setup, I don't know.
But the paperwork that all patients sign when they go to Westwood to have surgery at UCLA, whether head to toe, whether it's eye or foot or knee, it says that they're going to be doctors in training, medical students, residents, interns, fellows participating in your care. You just have the faculty member just have to allow it, because there are other specialties at UCLA where I was actually very close with a urologist who did residency at UCLA, and she told me very specifically, no, there are many techs who let us do the case with them, and then there are a few attendings, she says, who just sit there and watch. And so it's interesting. I think sometimes we get lost in that programs, academic programs, depending on the program, need to maybe prioritize that in the training the residents, training the other medical students, interns, whatever. It's tough. There's no easy answer to any of this stuff. You got to learn somehow.
Yeah.
Which brings another question. How would you guys now? You have a new procedure. We just came out with a new MIGS or MIBS device or whatever it is, and you're trying to do the surgery. How do you tell the patient, you're going to be my very first one?
I don't know. Do you tell the patient? I'm not so sure.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
You should tell the patient, but very easy. See, listen, I have done, you're having a surgery called MIGS, minimally invasive glaucoma surgery. I've done hundreds of them, or whatever the case may be. And there's a new one which I think will suit you better. It just recently on the market, we just have it available. It's a little different than the others, but it's the same class. And I'd like to use that one for you. And he told the patient.
Yeah, you can have the rep in the room.
Whatever. But think of it, a new IOL comes, or a new device for cataract surgery comes that I want to try to use. Okay, I'm going to use it. Let's say the Zepto device, I want to use this to make your capsulotomy. Okay, maybe, there's going to be my N=1, my very first case. But trust that, with this much experience, I can handle this. And I've done the preparation ahead of time. And now all these new devices, as you know, there's always a learning first. There's videos you have to watch. Sometimes there's a wet lab involved, things of this nature. So, you gotta keep pushing that. Never stop learning. Remember, there are people in practice in the community who just say, this is how I learned it back in residency 30 years ago, and I'm just gonna keep doing this way forever. That's wrong. Don't do that. Keep learning. So, you want to make sure that the way you do surgery in the future is not exactly what you're doing now. You've got to just keep incorporate new technologies. So you can get access to them and incorporate them in your practice. And then ultimately you want to have the most tools in your toolbox so you can give every patient the best tailored approach for their specific case and their anatomy. That makes the most sense.
Do you find that it's easier to experiment with new things when you're in solo practice? You're not necessarily having to negotiate with your partners about a new instrument or...
Yeah, I think partners will be pretty easy. The problem is probably big groups.
Yeah.
Like if you're working for a big HMO group and you say, I think we should really buy this $500,000 new piece of equipment. They may say no, I don't think so. Whereas if you're in a private group, and your partners all think it's a reasonable idea, hey, all right, let's do it. But you don't want to be locked into that. I think you want to be able to deliver cutting edge care to your patients. Like going back, the golden rule, right? You want to deliver the same care that you want to receive.
So I'm curious where you see CataractCoach going as a brand or business in the future. Do you have new things that you want to tackle with CataractCoach.com?
I do. I'm always thinking of new opportunities, new ideas, new projects I want to do. Ultimately, the bottom line goes, I always want to think what I want to listen to, I want to watch, I want to be involved with, what do I want to learn from? And so that's why I started this podcast. So these podcasts are now going to be for initially every 2 weeks on CataractCoach, second and fourth Mondays of the month. Maybe we'll go to more than that. But this is a neat way of learning, especially for me being able to like play it in my ears while I'm riding my bike, working out, driving to school, driving to work, whatever it is. So I think that's something I definitely want to keep up with on the podcast side. On the video side, we're coming on this year in October. I'll hit 2,000 videos, so it's a pretty good number there. And we may end up expanding it into other aspects, maybe not just cataracts only. I may end up partnering with one of the larger media companies. Not just sure yet. We'll see. But I'm not pressed. As long as I enjoy what I'm doing, I don't mind. If I can help a couple of surgeons become better, I've done my job. I don't need to rock the boat too much. But I think this is the way to learn. This is it. And you see at CataractCoach, I have now a full curriculum. Like I was going to ask about a curriculum because a lot of residency programs don't have a set curriculum for learning cataract surgery. Like, oh, do the IC, and then like, yeah, you can go to the OR, and maybe we'll back you into a case. Maybe you can like put the IOL or take out the viscoelastic or pass a suture. But there's kind of like a curriculum. So I've been making CataractCoach curriculum, right? First and third Sundays of every month, a compilation of like multiple prior videos on a specific topic. One all about anesthesia, one all about incision, one all about whatever, rexus, hydrodissection video, multiple chops of these. So I'm on CataractCoach curriculum lesson number 16, I think is the one I just recently did. IOL, loading the IOL. So I have a whole, that'll be maybe at least 25, maybe 30 part series of an actual curriculum. So I think that's kind of missing. So I definitely want to do that. I look back and my favorite video was this year was looking at was December 31, so I went back and looked at which videos got the most views. That's kind of neat to see. And so you can see which ones were popular among people. And so maybe I'll do more of those.
Some of my favorite videos have been not surgical videos, like the ones you talk about IOL planning.
Yeah.
What about, would you consider talking about the business of ophthalmology more on
Yeah,
CataractCoach?
we're open to anything. So I did one series of about 10 videos for the IOL Calc case series. So interesting IOL calcs,
Yeah.
but I didn't get a whole lot of great feedback from it, so I stopped after 10. So I could certainly do more of that. There can be a business aspect of it. Business aspect is a little tougher because it's kind of primarily U.S. based or as opposed to international. Most of our listeners are U.S. based, but I track that as well. But we have a lot of Brazil, India, England. We have other countries as well that are big fans of CataractCoach. But yeah, it's grown a lot. We're up to 47,000, almost 48,000 subscribers and about 16 million views, so pretty reasonable.
It's amazing. Yeah. How many ophthalmologists are there worldwide?
So worldwide, there's thought to be about 80,000 ophthalmologists, plus or minus.
Wow.
U.S., probably 15, maybe 18,000 ophthalmologists in the U.S. So it's a pretty good chunk. Now, obviously not 100% of my subscribers are all ophthalmologists, but a huge portion are. And so maybe what you've seen, we've done a few promoted videos there on CataractCoach, and so that's a reasonable thing to do also. I think if there are interesting technologies I can showcase or bring to our viewers to show them, happy to do that too. But yeah, I'm just having fun with it. Just having fun with it. I think that's for CataractCoach. For cataract surgery in general, where's it going? I think we're going to get to the point of accommodating IOLs. Speaking of promoted videos, I have a financial interest in the Juvene lens from LensGen. I was the first surgeon on the planet to do that lens in 2015 in Panama, and I've done quite a number in Panama and then in Monterrey, Mexico. And that truly is delivering accommodation. The latest result is the GRAIL study, which showed 3.5 diopters of dioptric range in one eye. And then with binocular summation, it ended up being around 4.5-ish. And that's with both eyes best distance corrected, not one eye myopic. It was pretty reasonable, and this is just the beginning. This is they'll only get better and better. So I think we're going to have a different change in the mindset even. So no more splitting the light. I think that's going to probably take more of a back seat, and we'll do more accommodating lenses. And even like that lens is interesting. It fills the capsular bag completely. It's, you don't just have a thin IOL and the capsular bag collapses and the vitreous comes forward. Yeah, it fills, the bag stays open. And also, by miracle, it eliminates PCO. So, while you're a resident, doing YAG laser is fun. But you're in practice, it's like another YAG.
Do you think we'll ever be doing in-office cataract surgery?
Yeah, I think we can certainly do that. You just ask yourself, is the experience that the patient is going to get, is it going to be good? At least to your standards, or appropriate for your population. If you have a more sick or frail or elderly population, a lot more comorbidities, other medical problems, do you maybe better off having an anesthesiologist in a surgery center? If it's a complex case for sure, but if it's a routine cataract on a healthier patient, and you can end up doing that. A lot of people are starting to do that now. So I'm not sure exactly where that'll pan out. I think we'll probably do both surgery centers and office in combination. And then with time, we'll see. But I'm flexible either way. But yeah, even the surgery center business has changed a lot in the last 10 years. So that's changed too. And we're in the age now of these declining reimbursements, which are, people outside our listeners outside the U.S. may not know that we just got another fee cut from Medicare in the year where we have like incredible inflation and cost of living's gone up dramatically. So it's interesting. Don't know how it'll all work out in the end. But the nice part is shh, don't tell anyone. I'll probably do this for free.
Some things that we're kind of told to look out for in contracts is the possibility of buying into a surgery center. Do you think that that's universally accepted as a good idea, or is it not always the right thing to?
Yeah, I think it's nice to have ownership stake, have some skin in the game in that surgery center, because you can help actually guide where it's going and guide. Okay, here's what we're going to do in the center. You have an ownership stake. I think that's a smart thing to do.
And like an eye-only center or multi-specialty?
I think it's flexible. Depends where you're practicing. In LA, it's probably easier to do an eye-only center like ours in Beverly Hills. Is very much eye-only. 7 ORs just for eyes. That's a lot of volume cases. But yeah, if you're another part of if you're more rural area and it's like a multi-specialty, that's fine too. Whatever it is. But just being involved in all aspects of the care that you deliver. I think that's important. Being in charge of that. So you can say, hey, for our surgery center, no, we really need to upgrade some equipment. And give that input.
Is there a conflict at all with, recommending that a patient go to a surgery center that you yourself own or own in part?
No, it's all disclosed to the patient. In fact, there's a new law in California as of January 1. Patients actually have to sign a thing that explains the Physician Payment Sunshine Act. There's actually a wording from the state of California that we cut and paste exactly to stay compliant with the law. In fact, there's even a little QR code that's on the form, and the patient, no, I'm not being very serious. And the patient sign this, and they can scan the QR code, and they can see your openpaymentsdata.cms.gov and see exactly what you got paid. And it's all there. So it's a different world, and I'm happy to disclose that to patients. I tell patients on my forum, I think it's a great thing that I work with ophthalmic industry. First, which multi-billion-dollar company is going to choose a terrible ophthalmologist to work with them? None. They're going to choose the best of the best. So by definition, if you work as a consultant for one of these companies, you're probably pretty good, really good in fact. And then also gives you access to like the latest things, latest technologies. You get to use these things first. So I think it's a benefit to the patients. And then I write them, I always put the patient's interests first. No matter what company I'm working with, I choose what's best for that patient, and that's the surgery and the product or the device or the IOL that we use. That's it. So, lead with your heart. You'll do great. I think you guys you're starting off in an amazing career. I think it's only going to get better from here. Ophthalmology is such an amazing field. I would certainly do it all over again. I'd certainly recommend it to anyone. Certainly recommend it to my own kids. Maybe one of them will do ophthalmology, but I think it's that much of an amazing field. And it's a small little club, and I really like that. And I think we make an incredible difference in patients' lives. And to me, that's the most fulfilling part.
Do you actively encourage your children to pursue ophthalmology, or do you take a sort of hands-off approach and hope they'll discover it on their own?
Well, honestly, the better is more hands-off. My kids are super achievers. They're so much smarter than I ever have been. I'm not even close. So they've achieved this much without me, kind of guiding them, or forcing them one path or the other. No, they should do their own thing. Whatever makes you happy. I didn't follow my parents' footsteps. My parents were both doctors, and they didn't do ophthalmology. But I was like, no, I'm doing my own thing. I want to do ophthalmology, and I'm so happy I did. If I was doing some other specialty, I don't think I'd be this happy. So, with that said, thankful every day to be an ophthalmologist. And I think you guys, you'll feel the same way, at least once you pass that ABO exam. Then you can relax a little bit and enjoy. But no, you're going to have an amazing career. I look forward to seeing how you guys progress in your career.
Yeah, it really gets better every year. I feel like, I enjoyed residency even from the start, but every single year it's just gotten a little bit better. So I hope that trajectory continues into practice, and from the sounds of it, sounds like it will.
No, you chose the right field. Absolutely. You guys are going to do great. Well, let's wrap this up. I want to thank you guys for spending a nice afternoon here chatting for a couple of hours. I think there's a lot of useful information here that will really benefit our viewers and our now listeners. Again, you can find all our podcasts on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere else where you find your podcasts. Plus, this will be a video on YouTube and, of course, on CataractCoach.com.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. All right, guys, thank you. Wow, what a great podcast with those young residents. Those guys are the future of ophthalmology. And there are so many young doctors out there who learn so much from us. I want to say thank you for participating in our project of CataractCoach.com, for watching our surgical videos, and now for actually downloading the audio for these podcasts. We're going to have a podcast at least twice a month, maybe even more. And you can download them and listen on your favorite podcast services: Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, all the above. And we're going to have a great time, and you're going to learn a lot, and we'll do the journey together. Take care until next time.